Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod's Science classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to see current affairs of 26th August 2021. In this lecture, we are going to see 9 topics which are very much relevant to UPSC. So let's get started with our discussion and let us see the list of the topics we are going to discuss in this lecture. So first topic, we are going to talk about vaccinate school staff. So why we need to go for vaccinating of school staff? Because many states are talking to reopen schools. So because of this, and now on priority basis, we need to vaccinate school staff. So this article will be important regarding education, which comes under GS paper 2. And next one is center raises fair price of sugar cane. So this article might talking about fair price. Okay. So if you are talking about other crops, here what is the price which is given, okay, by government, that is MSP, minimum support price. So for sugarcane we are having this fair price. Okay, so this is the thing you need to remember, and this topic is important from economy point of view, which comes under GS paper 3. And here we need to also understand some facts regarding what are the features or what are the conditions which are required for growing this sugar cane. That will be important from our geography point of view, and we need to also see which are the states producing this sugar cane in India. And next topic, it is about Sujalam campaign. Okay, this Sujalam campaign, which is mainly regarding soak pits. Okay, so what are the soak pits? Soak pits means nothing but, so we are mainly digging some pits, and these pits are mainly filled by some rock, some small stones, etc. And also we are going to cover it. So what happens whenever water which is entering into this soak pit, water will be going down. Okay, so this is the concept regarding the soak pits. So that will be very much useful for grey water management, that is domestic water management. So this topic will be important from governance, which comes under GS paper 2. And next one, it is about AY12 variant, which is one of the sublineage of a delta variant. So this variant, AY12 variant, which is very much responsible for increase or surge of this COVID-19 cases in Israel. So this article will be important regarding health, which comes under GS paper 2. And the next topic we are going to discuss, it is about industry 4.0. So we are going to see what this is industry 4.0 and what is the significance, how it will be useful for this MSME sectors now. So this article will be important from economy point of view, which comes under GS paper 3. And next topic we are going to discuss about technology in judiciary. So what are the challenges which are facing by technology, which mainly used in judiciary, and what is the way forward? So that will be important from our polity point of view. Okay, so this polity mainly comes under this GS paper 2. And next topic, it is about reservation. Okay, recently Supreme Court said that, so it should be reservation or creamy layer. It should not be based on sole economic criteria, but it will also include some social criteria also. Okay, yesterday lecture we discussed that, again we are going to discuss that topic, and that will be important from our polity, which comes under GS paper 2. And next one, it is about peafowls. So this there is one image I got in Hyderabad edition, that one peafowl entered into urban areas. Okay, so what happened here, what is the concern here is there is increase in number of these peafowls, and that led to increase in human conflict. So now we need to take some measures to control population of these peafowls. So this article will be important from environment and ecology point of view, which again comes under GS paper 3. And next topic, it is about new global climate policy. So here in this topic we are going to discuss about per capita carbon emissions. So that will be important from our environment and ecology point of view. So these are some important topics we are going to discuss in this lecture. So let's get started with our discussion, and let us see first topic. Title says vaccinate school staff on priority basis. So till now on priority basis, we came up with the vaccination of healthcare workers and as well as frontline workers, etc. Right now, here on priority basis, we need to give vaccine to the school staff. So this article will be important from health, and even especially it is important from education point of view, which comes under GS paper 2. So first of all, let us try to see context why it is in news. So if you see context, it mainly says that the union government, union government now decided to allocate more than 2 crore additional COVID-19 vaccines. So now union government which is to give more than 2 crore additional COVID-19 vaccine to states. So for what here more than 2 crores of additional vaccines? So this 2 crore of additional vaccines, they are given mainly to vaccinate school teachers and as well as some non-teaching staffs like ayas and some people who are working like watchmen, some helpers, etc., clerks, etc. So for school teachers and also even for non-teaching staff, on priority basis, here government decided to allocate more than 2 crore additional COVID-19 vaccines. And this will be done up to Teachers' Day on September 5th. So this is context. And now let us try to see some important details. So if you see details, it mainly says that these additional doses, they will be sent from August 27th to August 31st. So these additional doses will be sent to states by between August 27 to August 31st. So the Technical Advisory Group on Immunization mainly recommended that we need to go for a strategy, and in this strategy we need to vaccinate children who are aged between 12 to 17 years. So here even Technical Advisory Group also advised that we need to go for giving up vaccination for the children who are between 12 to 17 years. And after this we need to go for rolling out for all the children in that age group once adults have been vaccinated. So once adults have been vaccinated first, later on we need to go for vaccinating children who are between 12 to 17 years who have comorbidities, and after that we need to give vaccination to all the children in that 12 to 17 years of age group. And now let us try to see some important and basic fact. So there are almost 97 lakh teachers. And though they were not listed among the frontline workers who received initial priority dose. So already also these teachers who are not included in this priority list, but about 97 lakh teachers, they already took this vaccine. So these are some important details that which are given in this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. Title says Center mainly raises fair price of sugarcane. So this article mainly says that central government had increased fair price, the price of this sugarcane. So now let us try to see this topic. So if you are talking about this fair price, it will be not given by directly government to sugarcane farmers. So it will be given by sugar mills. So this price will be given by sugar mills to sugarcane farmers. So this is a one important thing. For other crops here, so MSP will be given by government. For here this sugarcane, so sugarcane mills, sugar mill owners, they will pay that price to sugarcane farmers. So here it is MSP, right? For other crops, government will be giving direct to farmers, that is MSP. But here FRP, so that is fair remunerative price, that will be given by sugar mill owners to farmers. So this article will be important regarding GS paper 3 under economy. So each and everything, every dimension we are going to discuss here. Don't worry about that. So if you see context, it mainly says that the union government has increased the minimum price that sugar mills must pay to sugarcane farmers. So here this fair price, it is a price that sugar mills or sugar mill owners, they need to pay to farmers, sugarcane farmers directly, and this price has been increased by 5 rupees per quintal. So for quintal there is increasing of 5 rupees. So this is context. And if you are talking about details, it mainly says that so setting up of this fair remunerative price FRP at rupees 290 per quintal for the season 2021 to 2022 sugar season, so which mainly runs from month of October till September. So in this October till September, now FRP of sugarcane mainly increased by 5 rupees per quintal. Center refused to hike the minimum price at which they can sell processed sugar citing consumer interest. So mainly here, so one important step which is taken by central government is FRP has increased. So this FRP means sugarcane mills, they need to pay to farmer. So on other side, center mainly refused to increase the price of sugar that can be sold, okay, by the sugar mills, okay. So this is the one important thing. So here government it is mainly protecting the farmers by increasing FRP, and also government it is also protecting consumer mainly to restricting or refusing this increase in sugar prices, okay, processed sugar prices by the sugar mills. So these are the some important steps. And if you are talking about why the government took this decision, so what are the reasons behind it? So if you are talking about reasons, recently Union Cabinet comes a day after Punjab cane farmers, they rested an additional of rupees 35 per a quintal. So per quintal here Punjab government came up with rupees 35 price hike from their government. So Punjab government mainly increased here price hike of rupees 35 per quintal, and even there are many demands which are coming from Uttar Pradesh also, okay, from last 3 consecutive years. So both the states, that is Punjab and UP, they are going to have polls next year. So this is the thing, why, because of the center came up with decision of increasing hike of this FRP. So now let us try to see about what is the significance of this move. So if you are talking about significance, the decision will mainly benefit 5 crore sugarcane farmers. So this decision mainly that will benefit 5 crore sugarcane farmers and their dependents, and as well as 5 lakh workers who are employed by the sugarcane mills and related industries. Okay, so this is the significance. And now let us try to see which are the major sugarcane producing areas. So here we have UP, here we have Punjab and Haryana regions, here some part of Gujarat, here we have Maharashtra, right, and here we have Karnataka, and some parts of Telangana is also, and even Andhra Pradesh, and even here Tamil Nadu. So these are the some areas which are growing this sugarcane, and these are major producing areas of sugarcane in India. Now let us move on to facts. Facts regarding, so what are the features or what are the conditions which are required for growing of this sugarcane. So sugarcane, it is normally grown as a kharif crop but not rabi. So we are growing this sugarcane as a kharif crop, and here this sugarcane which mainly needs hot humid climate, and it needs an average temperature of 21 degrees centigrade to 27 degrees centigrade. So what is the average temperature which is very much required for growing of sugarcane? That is 21 degrees centigrade to 27 degrees centigrade. And rainfall, it is about 75 to 150 centimeters of rainfall, which is very much necessary. And whenever we are going for growing of the sugarcane crops in areas which are having lesser rainfall, we need proper irrigation facilities also. And the ideal soil for growing of the sugarcane is deep, rich, loamy soil. And the soil mainly needs to be rich in nitrogen, calcium and phosphorus. And now let us try to talk about price determination of sugarcane. So who are going to decide price of this sugarcane? So if you are talking about prices of the sugarcane, so sugarcane prices are mainly decided by federal government and as well as state government, that is union government and as well as state government. Central government mainly announces FRP, fair remunerative prices, and this price mainly decided or determined based on recommendations of this CACP. So this CACP mainly stands for Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices. So based on this CACP recommendations, so we are going to decide this FRP, fair remunerative prices of this sugarcane. Okay, and later on this announcement, okay, so here this recommendations will be announced by Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. So this Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs will be chaired by our Prime Minister. And if you are talking about at a state government level, the State Advised Prices, SAP, okay, SAP mainly announced by key sugarcane producing states which are generally higher compared to that of this FRP. So these are the some important details that you need to know regarding this price determination of sugarcane. And now let us try to talk about some facts regarding the CSAP. So this part will be important from your prelims. So the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, that is CACP, which is an attached office. So it mainly attached to Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Government of India. So this CSAP came into existence since 1965 onwards. So this CSAP is an advisory body, and these recommendations which are given by this body, they are not binding on government. Okay. So these are some important things that you need to remember regarding this topic. And now let us try to see next topic. Title says campaign for 1 million soak pits in 100 days. So here if you see this image, you can understand there is a one pit is present. Inside that pit he is dumping some stone like materials. So this article mainly talking about Sujalam campaign. So this Sujalam campaign, it is about a campaign for 1 million soak pits in 100 days. So this article will be important regarding governance point of view, which comes under GS paper 2. So now let us try to talk about this topic in a very great detail. If you see context, it mainly says that the Jal Shakti Ministry, so which ministry? That is Jal Shakti Ministry launched a campaign. So this campaign, it is to create a million soak pits, okay? To set up a million soak pits in villages across country over next 100 days. So here one important point that you need to remember here, it is a Ministry of Jal Shakti, not Ministry of Agriculture, not Ministry of Urban Development, okay. So here Ministry of Jal Shakti launched a campaign. So this campaign, it is to create a million soak pits in villages across the country over 100 days. So within 100 days, that is 3 months of time. So we are going to have about a million soak pits in villages. So why soak pits? What is the advantage? What is the use of the soak pits? So here these soak pits, they will be very much useful because they helps to manage grey water, and they also prevent the clogging of water bodies. And if you see some more details, it mainly says that the household or community soak pits, they are the one of the simplest solution for grey water management. So what is this grey water management means? If you are doing bath, okay, and if you are washing your dishes, right, if you are washing your clothes, so whatever the water, wastewater which is generated after domestic purpose, that means after cleaning of utensils or cleaning of your washing, cleaning of your clothes, etc. So that water is called as a grey water. So this grey water management, it is very, very important because now we are facing a problem of water crisis. So in many areas, in many cities, especially in some metropolitan cities like Delhi and Chennai, Hyderabad, etc., we are facing this water crisis. To address this problem, we need to go for waste water management, that is especially grey water management. So we can use this grey water for other purposes, right? So here households or community soak pits, they are very much important, and it is also a very simple solution for grey water management. So with modernization, people, they feel that only solution to have drains for wastewater, which is then dumped into a common village pond. Actually now we are doing like, so because of increase in modernization, now whatever the water we are collecting, okay, whatever the wastewater we are getting, that are mainly connected to drainage pipes, and that is normally released into nearby village pond, etc., especially in villages. But it is not a best solution for the most of the villages, right? So because of this, what happened, we can go for using of the soak pits mainly to manage this grey water. So even in our Swachh Bharat mission, in the first phase, we mainly achieved open defecation free status. So this status mainly achieved by constructing of a toilet in every rural households, right? We went for persuasion, that is changing of attitude of villagers to use these toilets. So in the second phase of this Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, mainly it is mainly termed as ODF plus, that is open defecation free plus. So in this ODF plus, we are mainly focusing on sustain, and as well as we are mainly focusing on to extend these sanitation gains by focusing on even solid and as well as liquid waste management. So for both solid waste and as well as liquid waste management, now in this phase 2, that is ODF plus, we are mainly focusing here. So if you are talking about this campaign, name of this campaign is Sujalam campaign. So it is the Ministry of Jal Shakti began this Sujalam. It is a 100-day campaign. So and this 100-day campaign, it is also part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav celebrations. So this campaign, it is mainly to create more and more ODF plus villages, and we need to focus on this wastewater management at village level. Particularly, we are going for this wastewater management, especially grey water management through creation of 1 million soak pits, and also we are going to take some grey water management activities also. And one more important thing you need to remember here is, so this campaign, it is not only build desired infrastructure, for example soak pits for management, but it is also focusing on sustainable management of water bodies. So these are some important things that you need to remember. And now let us try to talk about what are the key activities that can be done under this campaign. So first and the foremost thing they are mainly going to do is they will organize community consultations. So first one is they will come up with community consultations and Kuli Baitaks and Gram Sabha meetings. So through these meetings they will mainly analyze the current situation of this wastewater management. So as you know, this Gram Sabha, it is a very powerful thing which mainly contains elected voters of that so and so area, right? And this Gram Sabha, it is one of the important and basic level for our PRIs to transform into participatory democracy. So in this Gram Sabha's meetings, they will go for analyzing the current situation of wastewater management, and later on they will pass on to maintain this ODF sustainability, and they will achieve needed number of soak pits to manage this grey water, and they need to develop a 100 days plan, and in this 100 days they need to undertake sustainable and as well as soak pit construction related activities in villages, and they need to construct a requisite number of soak pits. And next one is retrofit toilets. They were needed through this IEC and as well as community mobilization, and they will ensure all the newly emerging households in the villages, they have access to the toilets. So these are some important key activities under this campaign. So now let us move on to next topic. Title says Delta sublineage. Sublineage here is AY12 found in India. So this article may talking about one more sublineage, okay, sublineage of Delta virus. So now this sublineage, it is also found in India, okay, and it is one of the cause of concern because so this sublineage which is very much responsible for surge of cases in Israel. So now let us try to see this topic in a very great detail. So if you see contents, it mainly says that is INSACOG, that is Indian SARS Coronavirus 2 Genome Consortium, which mainly said that some cases of novel coronavirus Delta variant, they are widely prevalent in variants of concern in India, and now those Delta variants, they will be going into reclassified to another sublineage, so which has been associated with a large number of cases in Israel. So this article mainly talking about one sublineage of this Delta variant, that is AY12. So here INSACOG mainly said that some cases of novel coronavirus regarding this AY12 is also found in India, and this lineage, it is very much important because this is one of the important cause for surge of cases in Israel. So if you see some details, it mainly says that so Delta variant B16172 has birthed several sublineages. So those lineages is called as Delta plus variants. So these Delta plus variant, they are the most of its characteristic mutations, but are different in other ways. That means whenever the variants are moving from one person to another person, they will have a tendency. So what is their tendency? They can change, okay, they can come up with some changes in their genetic material, that is called as mutations. So because of the changes in the mutation, so it is very much difficult for vaccines even to identify those antigens. So if you are talking about further more details, which mainly says that the spike in the case in Israel, it is one of the cause of concern because about 60% of the country already got vaccinated. But now we are seeing there is increase in this trend of this COVID-19 virus infections in this Israel. That means we can say what are the vaccine they took till now, it is not much efficient. That is Pfizer vaccine. And this one is the larger number of cases in Israel. They had been linked to this AY12 variant. So if you are talking about some facts regarding this AY12, it is a sublineage. It is a sublineage of Delta which recently classified from Israel, and a complete reclassification and also estimating prevalence of AY12 in India is expected to take some time. So what does this mean? So as you know that this AY12, which is a lineage, which is a sub-lineage of this Delta variant, mainly for INSACOG to come up with a complete reclassification and as well as estimating the prevalence of this AY12 in India, which is mainly expected to take some more time. Okay, so this is gist of this topic. And now let us try to see next topic. Title says it's time for Industry 4.0. So this article mainly important from your economy point of view, which comes under GS paper 2, GS paper 3. So in this topic you can get some basic facts in your prelims regarding what is Industry 4.0, and actually this topic is important from your mains point of view. So now let us try to see this topic. So before that, first let us see what is the central theme of this article. So around which thing this article which is mainly revolving. So if you are talking about central theme, it mainly says that adopting Industry 4.0 technologies that would make MSME more efficient and competitive. So as we all know that due to this coronavirus, so these MSME, they hit a lot, and there is increase in unemployment in these people who used to work in these MSMEs. So here the author mainly says that we need to adopt Industry 4.0 technology, and this technology that will mainly helpful for MSMEs to be more efficient and as well as to be more competitive. So if you are talking about what is this meaning of this Industry 4.0, first of all. So if you are talking about this Industry 4.0, so the term Industry 4.0, which mainly coined by German government. Okay, German government termed this word or this term, that is Industry 4.0, in year 2011. So what will comes under this Industry 4.0? So it mainly includes additive manufacturing. It also includes Internet of Things, that is IoT, and cyber physical systems, and augmented reality or virtual reality, and data analytics, and some of the technologies which are mainly associated with this Industry 4.0. So these are the some examples of industries which mainly comes under this Industry 4.0. So if you are talking about significance, what will be the use? So whenever we are incorporating this Industry 4.0 in MSMEs, that will able for taking of a data driven decision. So that will be mainly helpful for this manufacturing industries to take data driven decisions. And next one is with availability of advanced algorithms which has captured the data that can be analyzed for decision making in real time. So here whenever we are using technology, that will be very much helpful for advanced algorithms, and as well as it will be also helpful to even capture data analyzed for decision making in real terms. And not only that, whenever we are incorporating technology, that will mainly helpful to reduce the cost of electronics, for example sensors, transmitters, and even cloud, right? And now let us try to see some important data which is given in this article. So if you see data, it mainly says that countries also coined their own industrial initiatives like Industry 4.0, but they are called with different names. US mainly calls it as smart manufacturing, US call it as smart manufacturing, and China mainly calls as Made in China 2025. India mainly refers as Make in India or Digital India. So if you are talking about what is the potential of MSMEs, so if you are talking about MSMEs, they play an important role in our economy, because these MSMEs, they are expected to become the backbone of our India, right? Because the economy mainly grows very much larger in this MSME sector. So these MSME, they comprises about 95% of industries in India, and they also procure more than 45% of total manufacturing output, and employment it is more than 90%. Okay, MSME will leads to more than 95% of industries, and here this technology will also be very much helpful for increase more than 45% of total manufacturing output, and we can also employ more than 40% of workforce. So these are about the potential of MSMEs. So in this way here, this MSMEs, they are contributing a lot to our economy. And even if you are talking about data, so according to Economic Survey 2021 to 21, so over 6 crores of MSME employees and more than 11 crore people, and they contribute about roughly 30% of to our GDP. So you can imagine how large these MSME sectors are contributing to our economy. And if you're talking about some challenges which are mainly faced by MSME to incorporate this industry 4.0, so first one is there is lack of awareness regarding industry, okay, how it is benefits. So how can we use and what can be done. And next one here is these MSMEs, they mainly consider that, so whenever we are going for any technology, okay, so technologies which are having the potential to demolish their existing systems. So when we are going for using of technology, yes, finally the technology will lead to demolishing of either existing systems. So it is a one important fear. So there is lack of awareness, and as well as there is lack of knowledge regarding so what are the benefits we get by using this industry 4.0. And next important challenge here is MSME will need to make major financial investments to adopt industry 4.0. So here what happened, there is a one concern or challenge regarding financial investments. So whenever we want to incorporate this industry 4.0, we need to invest, right? So we need huge amount of investments. And along with these investments, we also need expertise and as well as consultants, right? And next one is organization mainly requires a positive organizational culture, and even it needs support of people. And next challenge here is framework and steps that can assist this MSME in adopting industry 4.0 technology has been missing. So there is a lack of proper guidelines, proper steps, and as well as a proper framework regarding this adoption of this industry 4.0, which is absent in India. And not only that, MSME should mainly develop their own vision for industry 4.0, right? So here mainly for adopting and as well as for identifying the relevant tools, which is a very much difficult now. So these are some important challenges which are facing by this MSME sector. So what will be the significance? So significance here is whenever we are adopting this technology, that is industry 4.0, that will mainly offer a competitive environment. So because of this competitive environment, finally that will lead to increase in the quality of products to customers. And next one is additionally the delivery timings and as well as the flexibility to meet different needs, that will be mainly improved whenever we are using this industry 4.0. And now what is the way forward, what can be done? So if you're talking about way forward, India joined the group of top 50 countries. So India joined the group of top 50 countries in Global Innovation Index for the first time in year 2020. So in this condition, now government need to go for proper sensitization of Government of India and as well as higher education institutions, even practitioners, entrepreneurs and industrial associations, trade unions, venture capitalists, etc. here. And next one is already MSMEs are mainly hit by this COVID-19 pandemic, and on another side our healthcare system mainly depend upon this MSME sector. So whenever this MSME sectors are closing, means we will also seeing there will be impact on our healthcare services, right? So because of this, we need to talk about regarding this healthcare infrastructure in India. Now this is about this topic. I hope it is clear. Now let us try to see next topic. Title says helping and hindering justice. So this article mainly talking about technology. So if you see central theme, it mainly says that technology can be a game changer. Technology can be a game changer, but it is not a panacea for the ills plaguing codes. So this article mainly focusing on technology which is mainly used in courts. So what are the challenges and what can be done? So what is the context? Recently there are many issues which are arising regarding connection with this CoWIN platform. So this CoWIN platform, what is this? In this platform we can go for registering for vaccinations and they will allot one date. On that date we need to go for so and so center and we need to get our vaccination done. Right, but regarding this CoWIN platform there are many issues which we are seeing here. So in this context, Supreme Court pointed out that some of the major impediments in the delivery of vaccines. So some important challenges regarding this delivery of vaccines here is inadequate digital literacy. Inadequate digital literacy. Yes, people are having smartphones but they don't know how to use them. So there is lack or inadequate digital literacy across the world. And next one is, we can see there is inadequate digital penetration. So because of this inadequate digital penetration, now we can see some serious issues like bandwidth and as well as connectivity, and particularly especially in remote and as well as inaccessible regions. So because of all these reasons, the policy was falling short regarding this CoWIN platform. So finally, it could result in exclusion of the large section of population on account of the enumerated. So if you're talking about challenges regarding the courts, so recently due to this COVID-19 pandemic, now courts are also adopting technology. So court mainly observed that delivery of vaccines through these digital portals alone, it is equally true. That means the challenges we are facing there, the same challenges we are also facing in the delivery of justice through this online mode. Okay, so due to this COVID-19 pandemic, courts, they began to use a facility like e-filing of cases, that is electronic filing of cases, and even a new system of e-filing and artificial intelligence enabled reference also. It is one important challenge we are facing. And because of this increase in technology, here judiciary also facing some challenges regarding efficacy, transparency and as well as access to the court delivery services for every user. And next one is, here this article also says that here judiciary also seeks to harness technology in overcoming and as well as resolving the intractable ills that have long dogged in the judiciary. So if you're talking about judiciary, we are facing like, so from 2014 onwards we are talking that we need to go for some reforms in judiciary, but till now due to this till COVID-19 pandemic also we didn't have some online hearings, right? Okay, so now here due to this COVID-19 pandemic we are mainly seeking to harness technology and as well as we are mainly focusing to overcome and to resolve intractable ills, right? So these mainly include the massive backlogging of cases and unacceptable levels of judicial vacancies across the country. So what is the advantage when we are going for using of this technology in judiciary? So whenever we are going for using of technology in judiciary, we are having advantages like they will be cost effective and as well as they will be very much convenient, because even if I am sitting in house and I can also present my cases, right? And next one is, it is a very much efficient manner because we are having accountability and transparency there. Okay, but other mainly says that yes, technology it is important, but over reliance on this technology, which is not a panacea to all the ill plaguing to the courts if done mainly through forethought. So before implementing that, whenever we are having a proper goals and proper objectives here, and it will be not a panacea. So this is the gist. So if you're talking about some important details, it mainly says that data shows that pendency reached at all-time high. So pendency of cases which had been reached at all-time high during the virtual functioning of courts. So whenever we are going for this virtual functioning of courts, there is also increase in pendency of cases that is seen. And in the case of district courts, pendency also increased by 18.2%, that is between December 31st, 2019 and December 31st, 2020. So this data which is according to National Judicial Data Grid. And next one is, across 25 courts, pendency mainly witnessed its sharpest increase of 20.4 in 2019 to 2020. So even in the high courts also we are seeing there is increase in pendency. So what is the way forward? What can be done? So our next course of action, it should be based on evidence-based rational approach. So here when you want to take any decision or when you want to take any important move, so we need to focus on especially evidence-based rational approach. So here we need to study and we need to understand why video conversing in the criminal cases has been neither shortened trails or reduced the number of people who are awaiting the trail. So we don't know that. So in that context, we need to improve our transparency. And next one is while mobile phones, which are mainly used for many people, okay, and if they want to go to access with these cases here, so because of some limited internet options, and as well as it mainly remains urban users to use this, and even many lawyers who are living in the semi-urban and as well as rural districts, so whenever they find online hearings, they are very much challenging, because mostly because of some connectivity issues. There is no proper internet, okay, and they do not know proper way to how to use this and how it is working. So if you're talking about details, it mainly says that the India Justice Report 2020, which mainly pegs vaccines in the High Court at 38%, okay, so vacancies. So normally we are saying there is vacancies are increasing and pendencies of cases which is also increasing in judiciary. So according to India Justice Report 2020, it mainly says that there is increase in the vacancies in the High Court at 38%, and in lower courts like subordinate courts, district courts, etc. So there are increasing of number of pendency cases of about 22%, and more than 4 out of 10 posts of High Court judges, they remain vacant, okay, as of August 1st this year. So this is a data which mainly shows that yes, there is increase in the pendency and that leading to delay in the cases. Okay, so if you're talking about way forward, which mainly says that we need adequate trained manpower, and also we need to tailor the systems of specifications and also context that are mainly required. So these are the two important steps that can be taken mainly to avoid delays and to avoid vacancies in this judiciary. And now let us try to talk about next topic. Title says income and quotas. So background of this topic already discussed in yesterday's lecture. So now let us try to see this topic in a very great detail. So this topic will be important regarding GS paper 2 under polity. So first let us see context. So if you are talking about central theme, it mainly says that Supreme Court lays the limits of using economic criteria to determine the reservation eligibility. So this article mainly focusing on this reservation eligibility. So Supreme Court came up with some limits, okay. Supreme Court came up with some limits. It mainly said that, so here to identify whether so and so person will come under this reservation eligibility or not, so we cannot go only based on this economic criteria. We need to look other criteria also. So if you're talking about details, it mainly says that Supreme Court ruled that economic criteria is alone cannot be classified as members of these backward classes who are belonging to creamy layer. So just economic criteria, it is not important. So if you're talking about background, why? Why? Because Haryana state government, which had recently issued 2 notifications. So here one notification is about Haryana Backward Class Reservation and Services and Admission in Educational Institution Act of 2016. So first act, it is about Backward Class Reservation in Services and Admissions in Education Institutions Act of 2016. So the notification mainly subclassified backward community solely on based on economic basis, okay. So even whenever there is any notification which sent mainly to government, here it is mainly coming up with some changes, okay. So notification had been subclassified backward classes solely in economic basis, right. So backward community members, they are mainly earning about 6 lakh annuality. They were to be treated as a creamy layer as per the new criteria. So as per the new criteria, it mainly says that to identify any person or to keep any person in this creamy layer means here it should be not based on only economic criteria. So the 2 notifications had been challenged in Supreme Court. So for that, now let us try to see what's the reply which is given by our Honorable Supreme Court. So Supreme Court mainly held that here Haryana state government notification as being violative. So it is a violative of law which made it declared in this Indra Sahani judgment. So in this Indra Sahani judgment, we came up with this concept of this creamy layer on basis of income. And even next important thing which mainly highlighted here is Supreme Court. Supreme Court in 1992 Indra Sahani judgment which has declared that creamy layer in a backward community that should be excluded from reservation. Okay. So here Supreme Court in 1992 it mainly says that in the famous Indra Sahani judgment it mainly declared creamy layer. So creamy layer means people who are coming under this creamy layer, they will be excluded from this reservation. And Supreme Court has also clearly said that creamy layer would include persons who occupied posts in higher government jobs like IAS, IRS, IPS, IFS, etc. and also some all India services and had reached so higher level of the social advancement in this economic status. So these are the highlights of this Supreme Court judgment. So now let us try to see next topic. So I got this image, okay. So in this image you can see here it is a peafowl. So here you need to understand what is this Indian peafowl, what is the difference between peafowl and peacock, and also some important threats which are mainly facing by these peafowls. So Indian peafowls, they are mainly native of India, and we can also see them in some parts of Pakistan and also Sri Lanka. The Arakan Hills, they prevented their spread further east, while the Himalayas and Karakoram, they did northwards. So Himalayas and Karakoram mountains we are having in northern side, right? So in this, because of this lofty mountains, here peafowls, they cannot transmit it to beyond this Himalayas and Karakoram ranges. And in the eastern area we are having this Arakan mountains, Arakan Yoma, right? So because of this, here the spread of this peafowl that had been restricted. So it is our national bird that the peacock has the utmost level of legal protection in India. So if you are talking about some facts regarding what is this peacock and peafowl, so only male of this species, they are called as peacocks, and females, they are called as peahens, while the young chicks which are less than 1 year, they will be called as peachicks. Okay, so collectively they are known as peafowl. Peafowl includes peacock, peahens and as well as peachicks, regardless of their age and as well as their gender. So peacock it is a male, right? So male Indian peafowl. So here scientific name is Pavo cristatus. So this mainly belongs to this Phasinidae family. And if you are talking about various protections for this peafowl, so these peafowls mainly comes under section 51 subclass 1A of schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act. So under this Wildlife Protection Act, they are mainly getting protection from this section 51 1A of schedule 1, right? And if there is any violation, then there will be imprisonment. Imprisonment may be extended to 7 years. Okay, and they will be also imposing fine, and that fine shall not be less than 10,000 rupees. And since 2014 onwards, Indian peafowl has been protected under Appendix 3 of CITES. So under this Appendix 3 of CITES, here this peafowl which is mainly protected, and in IUCN Red List, it mainly listed under category of least concern. So this is very important from your prelims. And if you are talking about threats for this peafowls, so birds mainly experiencing increase in population, that is dwindling of population, and they are also seeing some effects from habitat loss and even poaching and contamination of food sources, etc. So these are some important facts that you need to remember regarding this topic. And now let us try to see next topic. So before seeing next topic, I want to make a small announcement on this platform. If you want to clear UPSC 2022, we came up with one excellent, highly beneficial and highly economical course, that is Current Affairs package along with the mains answer writing practice. So how this course will be useful to clear UPSC 2022? So one thing you need to remember here is before entering into examination hall, you need to know at least 1.5 years current affairs for sure. And this is right time to join this course to cover this 1.5 years current affairs in a comprehensive manner. And one more thing here is, in this course we are mainly focusing on your answer writing practice. So you will be having a question like, why we need to focus on this mains answer writing practice. So in mains you will be having 3 hours of time and you need to complete 20 questions. So imagine how fast you need to be. So you will be getting 7 to 7.5 minutes for every question, right? So within the 7 to 7.5 minutes, you need to read the question, you need to understand the demand of question, and you need to recall the things which is present in your database, that is in your brain, and you have to write answer. So for this fastness, you need to have a practice, right? So if you join this course, you will be practicing more than 300 questions and more than 50 essays. So in this way, this course which is designed as per demand of UPSC. And not only this, we are also providing prelims test on every Sunday, and we also provide you video explanation part. So in this way, this course which is designed as per demand of UPSC. So finally, I want to say one thing. Please don't take this course as a choice. Try to join this course as soon as possible and achieve your dream of clearing UPSC. So details of this course which is given in description box, and if you want to talk to me directly, you can call to this number 8074765513. Okay, now let's come back and let us see last topic of the day, that is about negotiating the new global climate policy. So this article mainly talking about this new global climate policy. So why we need to focus on this new global climate policy? Because many countries, they said that they are going to achieve their net zero emissions by so and so target years, for example 2050, 2060, like that. But this article mainly says that that is not enough. That is not enough. We need to take beyond that. We need to take steps beyond that. So this article will be important from our environment and ecology, which comes under GS paper 3. So now let us try to talk about this topic. So the central theme of this article is reducing per person emissions to global average as the first step to nation's net zero requires a human rights frame. So this article says that mainly first important steps that need to be taken to achieve this net zero, which mainly requires per person emissions that need to be reduced. So per capita emissions that need to be reduced. So now let us try to talk about this topic in a very great detail. So this article mainly talking about this new global climate policy. So if you see context, it mainly says that United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that is UNIPCC. Okay, that is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, recently came up with a report. We already discussed that report, right? So in that report, it mainly says that reaching this net zero emissions, it is not alone enough. So we need to take much more steps. We need to limit, okay, we need to limit per capita emissions, mainly because if we are reaching this net zero emissions, so it will not limit global warming and its adverse effects, because already amount of carbon dioxide emissions that already been released. So now if you are achieving this net zero, that means so you are mainly absorbing amount of carbon dioxide that is released now, right? So if you are releasing 100 units of carbon dioxide and now you are absorbing this 100 units, so what about the thing which is already emitted before, right? So here reaching this net zero will not limit global warming, because we need to do some excess things. So in this net zero, you are only absorbing amount of carbon dioxide that you are releasing now. But what about the carbon dioxide emissions that you already released, right? So whatever the carbon dioxide, excess carbon dioxide emissions that is already seen in our atmosphere, that is leading to global warming. So now because of this global warming, we are seeing melting of ice. Even there are many glacial lakes are forming, right? And not only that, we are seeing severe adverse impacts of climate change. There is increasing of floods, increasing of sudden rainfall, and increasing of droughts in some area, right? Even what happened in Bay of Bengal, there is moving of sea towards the coast, which is happening, especially in area of Antarvedi. Okay, so here if you're talking about some important details which are given in this article, which mainly says that for 30 years, climate negotiations have struggled with a frame that created an imbalance between countries sharing global carbon space and the only limited natural resource. So from last 3 decades, that is from last 30 years onwards, we are mainly coming up with climate negotiations. And here what happened in this climate negotiations, we are saying that developing countries, they need to decrease their emissions, but already developed countries, they released as much as possible carbon dioxide emissions, right? But from last 3 decades onwards, whatever the climate negotiations we are doing, so they are mainly creating some imbalance between countries regarding sharing of global carbon space. So now here in this past 3 decades, these developing countries, they are pressurized. They are pressurized to limit their use of remaining space for solution for this problem. So recently at this G20 Climate and Energy Ministerial meeting that held in July, so India proposed that major economies, they need to bring down their own per capita emissions to global average by 2030. So here in G20 climate meet, they said that we need to bring down our per capita emissions to the global average by 2030. It will be very much necessary mainly to combat this climate change. So what is the need here? Mainly to achieve this goal, we need to come up with reframing of negotiations. We need to bring per person emissions on human well-being. So it is not merely to achieve this net zero emission target by 2050, but by 2030 we need to reduce per capita emissions. Okay, so if you're talking about what are these per capita emissions, so for per capita emissions means so and so person, how much amount of this emission will be released into atmosphere. That is called as per capita. That means total amount of emissions which are released by country, which is divided by population. That is called as per capita emissions. So world's per capita greenhouse emission is about 6.55 tons of carbon dioxide. So if you are seeing the data regarding India's per capita emission, it is 1.96 tons. It is very much less compared to that of this global average. So if you are talking about other countries like US, Canada and Australia, so they are having more than 2.5 times of this per capita global average. And Germany and UK and France, they are having about 6.4 tons. It is just very much near to this global average. So by this data, we can say that here just 1/4 of global population, that is North America and Europe, they are very much responsible for nearly 970 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions. Okay, and here mainly recently many countries came up like they will achieve this net zero emissions by so and so year, that is 2050 and 2060 etc. here. Okay, so here it is not at all enough. So if you're talking about emission sources, so it is not just these emissions are released from increasing of use of vehicles etc., but even infrastructure, even construction sector, they are also essential contributors for this emission. And if you're talking about fuel consumption, due to this fuel consumption, that is leading to 25% of emissions overall. So the emissions, they are mainly increased from energy intensive like cement production and even half of steel produced etc. here. Okay, and now let us try to talk about ideas and implication. So recently new ideas came into picture. So the new idea here is climate justice. Okay, India came up with this climate justice, and this climate justice will have mainly 3 implications. First one is we are mainly focusing on drivers and patterns of natural resource, and we are not just focusing on anthropogenic emissions, that is based on human induced emissions. We are also focusing on different drivers and as well as patterns of natural resource. Okay, and here recently IPCC report also said that impacts such as rising of sea level and variability of rainfall, increase in heat or temperature, they are one of the important and not reversible impacts of climate change. And we can also see there will be adverse effects of climate change or adaptations. They are no longer at a local but it is a global concern. So this report mainly says that increasing of emissions by so and so country, it is not the issue of that country, but whenever there is increasing emission from one country, it will be also adversely impacting another country. So whenever we are taking any steps that need to be taken at a global level, so all countries, they need to follow that, then only we can mitigate this climate change. And this strategy also includes like multilateral cooperation will be very important, and we need to come up with common goals of human well-being as universal human rights based on the policy census. So we need to come up with a universal human rights based policy. So what is the way forward? What can be done? So we need to go for sharing prosperity, and this sharing prosperity should be the objective of new intergovernmental mechanism. We need to also go for involvement of private sector. Okay, we need to support renewable energies like solar energy, and we need to come up with joint research in new crop varieties, etc. So this is some way forward which is given in this article. And finally, author says that climate change, it is not just an environmental or sustainable development concern which is mainly involving trade-offs, but this climate change, to address this climate change, we require a civilizational transformation. We require a civilizational transformation in what we value, in where we live, and how we interact with each other. So this is about conclusion, and this is just of this topic. So I hope this is clear. So by this we are concluding today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. And don't forget to enroll to this current affairs package. Thank you so much.